Welcome to Blaze News, the mandate day 40. I'm Jill Savage. Tonight on the agenda, President Trump made good on his campaign promise to release thousands of additional documents tied to the assassination of JFK. As reporters comb through the files, one detail stuck out. CIA informant Gary Underhill reportedly believed a CIA coup was behind JFK's assassination, and strangely, Underhill was found dead in his apartment months after the event. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt declared the era of government secrecy is over in the Trump administration.
President Trump also promised maximum transparency and a commitment to rebuild the trust of the American people in our intelligence community. Part of that promise was to fully release previously classified records related to the assassination of former President John F. Kennedy. And he made that happen yesterday.
Earlier today, the SWAT team apprehended a gunman outside CIA headquarters after the release of the JFK files. Russian President Vladimir Putin agreed to temporarily stop attacking Ukrainian energy facilities, but did not endorse a full 30-day ceasefire. However, Trump is still in good spirits. He posted on Truth Social after a phone call with Ukrainian President Zelenskyy and said they are very much on track to peace, which Caroline Leavitt echoed at today's press briefing.
President Trump also spoke with President Zelenskyy this morning to align both Russia and Ukraine in terms of their needs and requests. As President Trump has said repeatedly, the precious lives and money that both Ukraine and Russia have been spending in this war would be better spent on the needs of their people. This terrible conflict would have never started with President Trump in charge, but he's determined to end it once and for all.
Trump's war against DEI is raging on. His administration paused $175 million in funding to the University of Pennsylvania over its inclusion of biological males in women's sports. Fox Business broke this news. Take a look.
This is just a taste of what could be coming down the pipe for Penn, a proactive punishment from the president to pull back discretionary spending going to the school from DOD and HHS. The university is still at risk of losing all its federal funding as a result of the ongoing Title IX investigations looking into Penn for allowing transgender athlete and biological male Leah Thomas to compete on the women's swim team, use women's locker rooms, while exposing his male genitalia to his fellow female athletes.
A recent report claims that the Biden administration buried findings that U.S. gas exports had no impact on climate change. And to show that he's following the science, Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum recently explained to Breitbart that the Trump administration will ramp up the production of clean American energy.
The sum of all of the EV charging stations, the EV batteries, the EV subsidies, that was $900 per ton of avoided CO2. It's 900 versus 60. So we say in North Dakota, we say it all the time. I'm saying it in Interior, we say it, and you see it's innovation, not regulation.
Last week, Glenn TV exposed a $100 million Biden-era NASA initiative that aimed to land the first woman and person of color on the moon. After Blaze News contacted the Office of Management and Budget about this, they changed the language of the program to eliminate DEI jargon. And here's some of what Glenn and his team discovered.
Under the Biden administration, NASA updated its mission, vowing to land a first woman and first person of color on the moon. 2021 internal presentation slide deck obtained exclusively by Blaze News and Glenn TV revealed NASA's exhaustive marketing plans for Artemis, a DEI-driven mission. The presentation explained NASA's plan to establish the Artemis brand. It stated that the mission must inspire several audience segments, future supporters, the public, collaborators, and advocates. The list included BIPOC and individuals, noting that Artemis should build mass appeal with and get to participate, especially underserved and underrepresented groups.
Elon Musk congratulated SpaceX and NASA for rescuing 2 astronauts who had been stranded at the International Space Station for 9 months. Elon told Sean Hannity that the astronauts are now safe at home. However, Musk elaborated that they could have been home much sooner.
We definitely offered to return the astronauts earlier. There's no question about that. The astronauts were only supposed to be there for 8 days, and they've been there for almost 10 months. So obviously that doesn't make any sense. SpaceX could have brought the astronauts back after a few months at most. And we made that offer to the Biden administration. It was rejected for political reasons, and that's just a fact.
Let's bring in Blaze editor-in-chief, Matthew Peterson. And you hear Elon just right there going, okay, a few months at most, right? We could have done this. All you had to do is reach out. We reached out to the Biden administration. The incompetency that we see time and time again that is just proving it wasn't ever the government's problem. We just needed a leader out there.
Yeah, it's really unconscionable what's happened with this entire space deal. I mean, you have a bunch of people who are stuck. NASA has egg on its face with a colossal failure yet again. And then the Biden administration didn't do anything. I mean, they could have done this a long time ago, as Elon says. Mainstream media not reporting on it. Legacy media doesn't care. They don't want to show anything wrong with the Biden administration or any incompetency in government. And then you have this miraculous rescue where, the dolphins appear, which, as someone said on Twitter, you couldn't even show at the end of The Martian. It would look too ridiculous. The dolphins show up to greet SpaceX and these rescued astronauts. And this is the example of the year of the difference between incompetence and leadership. And thank God we're now seeing examples of leadership every day.
And a nice story for Blaze News and Glenn TV to go through and get the DEI initiatives out of NASA as well, because that's such a big deal that I know that, Trump has signed the executive orders to get DEI out of federal programs. People in Congress are trying to get this through to make sure that it's a lasting implication. But we look at this and that there are still going to be some of the DEI nonsense that hang around some of these programs.
Okay, so this one, the whistleblowers came in, and personally, I was talking to them at the very beginning of this, and what was astounding about it, what people should know about it, go watch Glenn's special on this. I mean, Project Artemis, they had brand consultants and experts. They were rearranging the entire framework of how they spoke about space in terms of DEI. In terms of getting, women and black people to the moon or whatever, instead of just getting people to the moon. And this, how extensive this was, I mean, this is pages and pages and tons of meetings that NASA had about basically creating a narrative. They were obsessed with creating their own movie, right, about what they were doing. And that, just imagine how much wasted time and effort that is. And in the meantime, they get people stuck up in space. They can't even get them out, and they need Elon to come rescue them. So this is a great example of the new era that we're in. And it's a great example also of Blaze Media working arm in arm to actually affect change. Russ Vogt and OMB, looked at this, like, what the hell is this? They immediately got the stuff off the website. And of course, I think all this stuff is going to be canceled. Good riddance.
Well, when we come back, we're going to continue to break down the problems that they have on the left. Chris Bedford will show you the insane Democrat Party platform of America Worst next. Well, now I'm going to tell you why I love Good Ranchers, because since 2017, we've seen 140,000 family farms have shut down because all that meat in the grocery store isn't coming from American farms anymore. It's coming from overseas, where they care about mass production and low cost. They don't really care about the quality of your food anymore. So this spring, we need to change that. It's time to spring into action and put American farms first, because nothing beats American quality. And that's why I choose GoodRanchers.com, because they stand for integrity, tradition, and 100% American raised meat. All their products at GoodRanchers.com have trustworthy ingredients, because we know that their meat is born, raised, and harvested right here in the United States, so you know exactly where it's coming from. And it doesn't have any of the antibiotics, the hormones, the seed oils. It's just one simple ingredient, and that's meat. Good Ranchers is delivered straight to your door, so you can get that true farm-to-table transparency and support American ranchers at the same time. And you can feel good about what you're serving. It's going to be clean, simple, exactly how it should be. And you can skip the grocery store. So right now, Good Ranchers is offering their Spring into Action promotion. So when you subscribe to any of their boxes, you get to decide if you want free chicken nuggets, free bacon, ground beef, or salmon in every order for a year. Just be sure to use my code Jill at checkout and get $40 off your first order. It's the best deal that they've ever done. So spring into action and help American farmers with every purchase. Visit GoodRanchers.com now. Use code Jill for free meat for a year and $40 off. Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. It looks like the Democrats have a new priority list, and let's just say it's not exactly pro-America. From defending Hezbollah sympathizers to trying to bail out gangsters, and now coming for Chuck Schumer's head, the left is spiraling fast. So what's really going on here? This is what Bedford wrote about in his latest Beltway brief, and he joins us now. So Chris, what's going on with this chaos in the Democratic Party, and what does it mean for 2025, more importantly?
You know, this is something that I'm so used to seeing on the American right, and you haven't seen it in a long time on the American left, not really since they seriously took power in the last couple decades, essentially. And that's a circular firing squad. It's a civil war. It's completely misdirected fights. You know, and I used to kind of lament how you could look at the biggest fights in the culture war, and it would be over whether or not there were 10 commandments in the front of the courthouse, which is a noble fight unless gay marriage is kicking in the back door and abortion is about to enter the front and assisted suicide is spreading through the Capitol. Like, it seems like they might actually be distractions. And the American left is kind of going through that moment right now where they're so misdirected, they're so rudderless, they're so leaderless. And none of this is surprising. I mean, this is the coalition that President Barack Obama put together through the force of his personality. They're not in agreement with each other. The working class and union aspects of the party, which we've now seen basically splinter, were not in agreement with the lefties and the greenies. Neither of those sides really shared a whole lot, except on the radical fringes with the transgender movement or the illegal immigrants in particular. That was a lobby that he ended his White House with them shouting him down inside of his own White House, which is not an easy place to get into if you're not even a citizen, even if you are a citizen. So with him gone, they were able to hold it together with momentum, with anti-Trumpism, with backing Joe Biden at first. But as soon as that started to crack and the anti-Trumpism started to fall away and not really work, they just went in a million directions, and half of it's at each other's throats. So the last week, we've seen a couple of major scandals that they've tried to get their claws into. One was the deportation of 200 some odd violent, murderous international gang members from Venezuela. Not exactly the kind of thing that's going to actually bring your coalition back together. Not something that's going to bring working class Americans back to voting for Democrats. Not something that's really going to excite anyone except for the lunatics at the ACLU. And then you had, this was when they thought it was good. They had a woman who wore a hijab, who was a doctor, coming back. She's affiliated with Brown University, and she's detained and deported. So this one they thought was great. If you remember from 2017, the hijab was just the symbol of America on the American left. They had the woman whose picture doesn't even wear a hijab, wearing the American flag hijab. The same guy who did Barack Obama's famous Hope and Change poster made one for her. The funny thing about her is that she's not even a hijab-wearing person. She just put one on to show Muslim solidarity down at 9/11's Ground Zero in Manhattan, which is a strange and disrespectful thing to do in the first place. And the second person they jumped behind was Linda Sarsour, who ended up having to be kicked out of the Women's March because of allegations of such overt anti-Semitism they couldn't even put up with it. They tried to do a reboot of that with this Brown University professor, but it turns out that she actually was, while she was in Lebanon, attending the funeral of the dead leader of Hezbollah. That she had text messages and photos on her phone celebrating the martyrs of Hezbollah and Hamas. That she had picture of the Ayatollah of Iran with laudatory notes. That she said that these are the things that she believes in as spiritual teachings and guides. Not exactly someone to bring back that Democratic coalition that's so fractured. I'm sure it tickles some people. It tickles the Council on American Islamic Relations people, but they're not a major part of the coalition, and it seems like they even turned on a lot of the Democrats over some of the foreign policy decisions under President Biden. And then, what else are they using their energy on? You've got Nancy Pelosi out there and top Hill Democrats now out there, but what are they doing? They're attacking Chuck Schumer. They're trying to take out the leader in the Senate, and this is someone who's been around for a long time. I easily get when you're in a political party, you get really sick of the 70-something-year-olds who lead your party and who don't feel like have their finger on the pulse. But he's also someone who is guilty in this moment of restraining the Democrats' stupider impulses, which was to lose a shutdown fight in order to wave the banners, to charge the cliffs, charge the canyon in their convertible with the banners waving. Not exactly a winning strategy. His goal is to win elections in the midterms. That's what his job is. And they're going after him with all their energy. So I'm looking at where they are, what they're doing, and I'm thinking they're not doing anything that is even the beginning of a step in the right direction to reuniting the Democratic Party as an actual opposition force to the Republicans and to the MAGA movement.
Yeah, so let's I couldn't agree more. Let's go to the big picture here. When Trump won the nomination for the first time for the GOP, I think it was instantaneously recognizable to a lot of us, me certainly, that this was the end of the Republican Party as anyone had known it. And the reason I said that is because you had 20 years of folk heroes in the primaries where, you know, one man would stand up against the media, unlike the sort of uniparty types or the professional politicians, and they would rise in the polls for a while. So you have these folk heroes like Newt Gingrich ran, right? And he was very popular for a little while. You'd have Huckabee had a moment in the sun, right? And what you could see them drifting off of was this divide in the Republican Party that ultimately Trump broke and said, no, we're actually done with the Romneys. It's over. And you could see it being over then. And now with the resounding victory in November, the Republican Party is irrevocably changed. But this entire time, right, we need to acknowledge that the landscape of reality is the same for everyone. Yes, the country is divided into Republican and Democrat, but the landscape of reality you're dealing with is complicated and people have different views about it. And on the left, we have seen the same thing, right? They successfully put down Bernie a few times, notably the last time when they brought in Biden and Obama said, no, we're all just going to go with this guy when we're divided. So it seems to me like there's been a lagging indicator. They've been a little bit behind the right in dealing with this fracture in America. And now all of a sudden they're paying the fiddler. In the midst of that, my impression is right now, there really aren't there is no Trump. Like there's no figure that even seems potential. So most likely what we're going to see is disarray for a while, I would guess. And then we're going to see completely new stuff happen because I just don't see any of these people able to rise to the occasion. Do you?
No, I don't. And remember, I actually don't think that Barack Obama put himself in this position. I think other people pushed him into this kind of a comic book Black Messiah role where you saw the art, you saw the fan culture around him, you saw the comic books, you saw the pop culture. Like this guy was going to free America of its original sin, which to them was always slavery. This guy was going to change the landscape of reality. This guy was going to change everything. And all he really ended up doing was changing the Democratic Party and taking over about a fifth of the U.S. economy under federal regulations to not really anyone's benefit, and also just changing their coalition. He ended up leading them into the desert, but there didn't end up actually being a huge plan. And then what's amazing is after gutting the Democratic Party completely and taking over their operations internally within the Obama campaign and all of their tools, this young man who stayed in Colorado and parts of a neighborhood of Washington, D.C., was no longer a forward leader of the Democratic Party. He went to go party with Jay-Z and Beyonce. He kind of disappeared from the scene. And you were left with all these people who'd followed him into the desert, even though they'd gone away from their traditional roots. They'd gone away from the people who backed them. The Philadelphia Democrats are no longer friends with the unions and the mob and other groups that used to be a source of their power in Philadelphia. Nancy Pelosi cheered when the Baltimore Democrats, the new radical ones, tore down the statue of Christopher Columbus that her father and her brother had erected when they were leaders of Baltimore. They followed this guy and they followed this moral cause. It was extremely popular until very suddenly it wasn't. And all that took was it turning out that Joe Biden was not with it anymore, and that Kamala Harris was a fraud, and everyone started running for the exits. Donald Trump was back, and Trump kind of held it together for the Democrats for so long. He was like the way that the Soviet Union held together the libertarians and the conservatives and the war hawks and the Republican side for so long. With him no longer that potent force ready to come back, with him being